For both of these cushion covers I've used invisible zips, but they're both fitted in slightly different ways. The reason I like invisible zips is purely because of that. You can't see them apart from the telltale little teardrop shaped pull on the end of the zip. But not only is the zip concealed, you don't actually use very much fabric because you're only using one square of fabric to the same size as the front of the fabric, and they're surprisingly easy to fit as well. So with the smaller cushion here, the zip goes all the way across and into the end of the seam. It does make a little bit of a lump where the zip closes, but that's barely noticeable. You certainly don't see it from the front or from the back, for that matter, and who's going to look underneath it after all. But the zip's fitted along here, and the teeth or the coil are on the underside so you don't see them. With the larger cushion, I've got a bit of a seam at the end of each zip. So this one, the zip wasn't the whole length of the cushion, so I had to make a seam into the top and into the bottom. That's the difference with putting a zip into a cushion as opposed to putting an invisible zip into the back of a dress, because if it's a dress or a skirt, it's going to be open at the top. With a cushion, we want the zip to sit centrally, so the seam goes up to the zip from each end. So this is how we do it. So say this is the front and the back of my cushion cover, and in this instance my zip is longer than the cushion fabric. It would be a good idea, if you have a zipper foot, an invisible zipper foot, to put that onto your machine now. These have two small grooves underneath them which open out the coil of the zip as you're sewing, and you'll thread one side through one and one through the other. I'll show you how to do that in just a second on the machine. So I find the easiest way to do this is to lay out your fabric pieces. If your fabric has a right and wrong side, right side up, and with the zip open, right side up. And then we're going to flip the zip over so that the left hand side, the raw edge of the zip tape is against the raw edge of the fabric, and just make sure that the zip pull is out of the way. You do have a stopper on the end of these. They tend to be plastic, so it's not so important, but we do want to avoid hitting that with a needle if we can. So my zip stop is just off the edge of the fabric here. Now you can pin this in place if you want to, or use a fabric glue stick. I'm not going to for this one. So take it over to your sewing machine. Oh, a tip for you as well. If you run a medium hot iron over the zip with it open and just pull back the zip coil, that's going to expose the crease in which you're going to sew. If you don't have a zipper foot, an invisible zip on your foot on your sewing machine, then you can use a regular zipper foot, but you will have to uncurl this as you're sewing. So just turn this around so that you can get a better view of what's actually happening. So this time I'm going to put the coil underneath the left hand side of the zipper foot, and as I'm sewing I'm simply going to pull that open slightly just to kind of get it going. So take your time. I'm lining this up with the edge of the fabric at the same time as I'm making sure that that zip coil is open. It is actually quite quick. Once you've fitted your first invisible zip, I think everything is going to be having invisible zips fitted to it. Okay, so just again, take your time to start with. Roll this back. Do be aware also that the width of the zip tape is now your seam allowance. So I would allow a 1/2 inch or a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Now when you come to the end where the zip pull is, the slider is down here, you won't ever be able to get right up to the end of the tape because the slider will be in the way. So just go as far as you can towards the zip pull. So that's how we're looking. So at this point I can close the zip up and just make sure that I haven't caught any of the zip coil in the stitches, because as I said earlier, you won't be able to open it. Right, then we're going to lay this back out again. This is how I kind of have it make sense to me. And put your second piece of fabric right side up and your zip open again. And then we're flipping it over this way so that the zip again is right sides together. with the outer fabric, and I'm lining up the top of the outer fabric here, so I know that the zip's going to start in the same place. We could close this actually, that may make it a little bit easier to do so. So line up the edge there, and just to get us started, I will pop a pin in there to hold it in place. And then again, undo the zip. You always fit these zips with the zip open. So this time, when we come to the sewing machine, we're going to use the groove in the invisible zipper foot, which is on the right hand side. So no need to move the needle from one side to another. And pop that over the teeth, make sure they're just rolled back just to get started. There we go. And once it's kind of grabbed the end of that and the coils are open, then you can just carry on sewing. So I'm just going to fold the zip inwards. You may find that you need to press the fabric at this point, so I'll do that while I'm here as well. So I'll just bring up my ironing pad, and just press the fabric away from the zip. No need to top stitch, we don't want to draw any attention to the zip at all, so just keep that nice and smooth, like so. And the same on this side. So you should find that the zip teeth are just sitting right along the edge of your fabric. That's the idea. And then let's zip the zip up, because at this point you can always re-go over it. Now this may happen. It looks as though you fitted the zip wrongly because it's twisted, when really all you need to do is to unroll it. That tends to happen with invisible zips sometimes. And then let's close the zip and just make sure we're happy with that stitches. Again, that needs another quick press, but that should be barely visible at all in the bottom of your cushion cover. Then trim off the ends of the zip, making sure that the zip is open, and then your cushion cover sides will go right sides together, and then you can sew straight down to the edges. Just make sure that the zip teeth at the end are together when you come to the end here. So that's the way of putting the zip in, where it goes all the way from one side of the cushion cover to the other. The second way of doing this is when your zip isn't as long, or you don't want it to be as long as your cushion cover fabric. So we're going to do exactly as we did before. Right sides facing upwards if you have a right and wrong side. Open up the zip. Now I've deliberately made this zip a little bit shorter, so I've cut the end off it because I wanted it to fit into the seam. So just be careful that you don't pull that slider all the way off the end, because you'll never get it back on again. So line this up centrally, taking into account you're going to stop sewing before you hit that slider. You won't get straight up to it. So just pop that in there as evenly as you can. And then just like before, we'll open out that side of the coil and pop that under your invisible zip foot. Now I said earlier you shouldn't need to adjust your needle position. Experiment first of all. If you turn the hand wheel towards you, you want to make sure that the needle isn't going to hit those teeth, or coil as they are. So if you do need to, just adjust that needle slightly, taking it to one side or the other. The needle just wants to sit just to one side of the coil. And then like before, I'm just going to encourage that to open to get started and sew it in place. Then take your second side of the fabric, again facing upwards. Let's fold this over so again it's the right sides together. So that's how the zip needs to fit. This is how I can make it understand the way that it fits without getting things the wrong way around. Let's close the zip flip it over, and then the second side of the zip is going to go against here. So again, line up the edges of the fabric here. You will have a bit unsewn at the top and the bottom of the zip. That's what we need that. That'll become clear in a second. And I'm just going to pop a pin so I know the right placement of the zip. And then open it. Right, and then this time, just like before, we're going to sew the opposite side of the zip. Just move my pin out of the way, using the other side of the groove in the foot. So this is the right hand side of the groove in the foot. Again, I'm just going to turn that hand wheel towards me because I did move the needle slightly, and just make sure it's sitting in the right place. And so. And let's just close the zip just to make sure that I've caught the teeth in the right place. That's twisted over again. That's it. So that's fine, I'm happy with that. So now we need to sew up the seams, and again I know that will need pressing. So you'll put your regular standard foot back on your sewing machine again. So that drops off and that goes on. Now this time you can see where the start of my stitches was, where the zip came in. I'll open it up a little bit actually. So from the edge of the fabric, I'm now going to sew up to that point and just move the end of the zip out of the way. So just move that as I'm coming to it. And if I can, I want to stop exactly on the end of that row of stitches. I'll just go back a little bit. Then do the same on the other end. So that's kind of the tail end of the zip. So from the edge up to that stitch mark there. So again, pull the end of the pull the end of the fabric, pull the end of the zip out of the way when you start to sew the fabric, and just up to that mark. So the seam should carry on from the end of the zip. I'm just going to iron that because it does look a little bit puckered up at the moment. So from the end of the zip into the seam, your zip should just blend nicely. So again, all you see is that little telltale teardrop zip pull, and the rest of the zip is invisible.